you had a life-threatening accident that was leaving you unable to work.
I actually thought, I'm going to die. Something in my mind just went, no, I'm not going. I can't leave my boys. They're not ready for me to go. Like, my boys need me. I took 2 steps.
Almost 2 to 3 times, you're constantly saying, I was lucky.
You know, people said to me in the hospital, poor you. And I said, I should be in the morgue. I'm not in the morgue. I'm the luckiest person in the world.
What was life for you before the accident?
Well, I was so happy. I was a workaholic.
What's keeping you going?
The only thing that I thought of, the only thing that I cared of was my husband, my 4 boys. And that's ultimately the only thing that I couldn't leave. Let me be honest with you, for 12 years, I beat myself up that I accepted it.
I'm curious, what do your process for TEDx look like when you are preparing for the stage?
Yes, I had to travel. It was the best 15 minutes of my life. Don't tell my husband that. But it was amazing. They coach you through the process.
What is a good metric to measure success?
What outcome is it that you want to achieve? Live in the moment and reward yourself.
So what's up, my friend? Welcome. And before you jump straight into this episode, there are 3 boxes I'd love you to check. First things first, make sure to hit the subscribe and the follow button, because the more we grow, the bigger guests we can approach and the more value we can bring to you here on the podcast. Number 2, a lot of friends always watch some of these episodes and say to me, hey, Arrey, I really did enjoy this part of the episode. So what I want you to do when you get to a place like that, pick up your phone and share this with a friend and say, hey, check this out. From 10 to 12 minutes, there's something very important I'd love you to see. Number 3, make sure to check the description down below for very helpful resources. You're going to find a link to join the Smart Club, which is my private mentorship club for friends who want to learn a digital marketing skill. Whether your goal is to become a freelancer, if you're building your brand, or if you want to get a job in digital marketing, check that out in the description. Also, you're going to find a link to join our 21,000 Smart Friends on emails, where you can get an email from me for free once every week. Plus, you're going to see the link to connect with our guest. So please make sure you tick these 3 boxes as you watch and enjoy the rest of this episode.
My goal for anyone watching this will be 2 most important things: that by the time they finish watching this, they should be able to understand the path to get success with leadership and with business. And then we can take this anywhere else, because I know that there's a lot of experience you have on the table, which we have to explore. You have a very interesting story, which we're going to talk about, but I wanted to circle a bit back. What was life for you before the accident, which I think was where a lot of things started to open up for you? What was life for you during that time?
Well, I was so happy. Like 13 years ago, I was a call center coach like 25, 26 years ago, came out of there, I got made redundant, and I went into travel, and then was a sales manager for a home working travel company. And I have 3 children. They're all 3 years. So at that time, I think they were probably 9, 6, and 3. So working in a call center where they had no, basically thought that you had no children, was really precious. So when I had this home working opportunity came along, fantastic. And I was doing that and I loved it, absolutely loved it. But I always had this dream of having a hairdressing salon. I've been hairdressing like when I was 14, and myself and my hairdresser used to have to chat. I go, when something comes up. Anyway, one day she knocked on the door and said, hey, Deb, I've just been down to the gym and there's a hairdressing salon. Do we want it? And even though I loved my job and I had 5 holidays a year and my children were home, if they were sick, I just pick them up, put them on the sofa, carry on working. All of us managers were home workers. So if we had a meeting, rather than just fly up to Stoke, we'd fly to Marbella. I had like a great life. I could not say no to the hairdressing salon. Like, it was impossible for me to say no. She was very much like, I'm going to get a Beetle when we're successful. And I was like, oh, she drives that Beetle past my house. And I was grinding my teeth. So I was like, okay, how do I make this work? The building's not even built. We go down, hard hats on, look at the place. It's a teeny tiny room in a 5-star luxury gym. They spent £15 million building. So I worked it out. I talked to my bosses into a job share. So I brought another manager in to do half of my job. And then we opened the salon and I did half the week there and half the week as a sales manager. And that was tough. I did that for a year. And then I left the sales manager job because I both got busy in the July of the following year. And I was like, the hairdressing was really busy, and because it's holiday time, and then the holidays were really busy, and it was just, what do I do? So I handed my notice in with the travel company. And then August was completely dead in the salons, what it's like in Swindon, because we're a big Honda town. So I was like, made a mistake. Anyway, 2-3 years later, we were still going, having a great time. It's in a 5-star luxury gym. I loved it. It was a family gym. My kids could come down. You know, it's part of the, now it's part of the David Lloyd group, but he was actually David Lloyd's son. So it was very Tennessee, and really state of the art. My business partner left. And so there was a little bit of a divorce, shall we say. And so then one of the conditions of me taking over the salon on my own is that I changed the name. So I relaunched the salon. There's a whole what's in a name branding conversation there, i.e. nobody knew what we were called. Relaunched the salon, brought in a great footballer to do the stuff. 2 months later, have the car accident, and I'm a hairdresser with a broken leg. So, and I loved the salon. I loved the business. I loved being in the gym. My whole world was about the gym. You know, it's like being in hospitality. That's your lifestyle. Everyone who came into my salon either ran a class, been to a class, or was hiding from a class. I said, do body perm, I used to run, to swim 100 lengths. And then one day I go and pick up a car and end up in a serious car accident and don't walk for 6 months. So prior to that, I was having a great time.
Yeah. What was it about the gym that you really loved?
Obviously, as a woman, you're always battling with the body. I love to be strong. I started lifting weights at like 16. I like to be active and I like to be strong. I like to lift weights, body pump I loved. I'm not about the yoga and all the other little bendy, slow stuff. I like the fast, energizing stuff. And if you've had, sometimes on a Wednesday, there was a class just after I finished. And I had one client that would come in at, say, 6:45. He worked for a courier company, and we would get changed before he came in. So we'd go out the back and get changed into our gym stuff, cut the hair, and leave everything. And my apprentice would run upstairs and stack my weights so that the minute he was finished with the haircut, he's out the door. He's lovely. He's out the door. Went up, done the body pump, then come down at 8 o'clock and sweep up and put everything. We were so dedicated, and it's like a family. You know, it's very. It's just all of your, it's a different mentality, I suppose. It's a testament to how my mentality is now. That when we have a snow day, traditionally it snows in the UK, nobody goes to work, no one goes to school. And I phoned my clients and said, oh, it's snowing. And they were like, that's fine. We only live 5 miles away. We'll walk. And I was like, okay, so no snow day for me then, because these guys are running marathons and they're lifting weights and they're entering Ironmans. A little bit of snow was never going to stop them. So it was a lovely atmosphere. It was a very family orientated club. You'd go down there in the morning for a class. You could be there all day, but the same aspects, these guys took squat weights when you went out. It's very, I remember taking my friends and she was like, I've got a babysitter and they're talking squat weights, because it was the gym, it's a health thing. So imagine when you can't walk for 6 months, how you fit into that lifestyle.
So somewhere around along the line, you had a life-threatening accident that struck and that was leaving you unable to walk. So
13 years ago, 31st of January, I had this mad idea that I wanted to buy a car and own the car. We'd had company cars, and if you've ever had a company car, there's a mileage thing. You have to have X amount of miles. Yeah. And we're Swindon. My husband was working in Oxford, and it was just always so stressful to use the car because you were like, oh, we're using the miles up. It was almost like money. And so my husband worked for BMW. We had beautiful cars, but I was just like, let's just get a car and own it and not have to worry about it. So I go and buy an old banger, literally an old banger on eBay. And it's up in, I don't know, Stratford or Coventry, somewhere around there. And say to my husband, right, okay, let's go. So we go up to Leicester, we buy the car. It's not very much money, but he said, okay, I'll drive the car home. So we had we actually had a courtesy car at the time. So we had a brand new 5 Series M3 BMW that had like 10 miles on it that we'd driven up in. And so I felt a little bit guilty that I was driving that and he was driving the banger, and it was my choice. So about 12-15 miles from home, I just kind of flagged him down and said, look, let's swap over. You go and take this car, go and pick boys up.
You were the one who flagged him and said, let's swap.
Yeah, I was the one who flagged him and said, let's swap. So we stopped at the services and swapped over. So I said, I'll go and get some food. You go and get the kids, take this M3 BMW that was stunning, and I'll drive this car. We were driven like 35 miles, so he drove off. And I came out of the services and came onto the dual carriageway, and I'd only driven about half a mile and all the power went out of the car, like nothing. I was foot to the floor. I've got no lights. I've got no engine. I've got nothing. And I'm in the fast lane of the dual carriageway, and it's 7 o'clock at night or around about there. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I had enough power, not power, but enough like movement to get. There was a junction, and I thought if I can get over to there. So I got to the other side of the road and pulled up onto what was a really, really narrow hard shoulder. It's about a half the car hard shoulder, and the rest had to go on the grass. It's January. I'm like, am I going to sink? Am I going to get stuck now? So I'm off the road, but I'm very close to the road, but I'm off. I've got 1 bar left on my phone, because in those days you didn't really think so much about the phone. So I phoned my husband, said, maybe we've run out of petrol, maybe because we've driven the car, it's fine. Maybe we've run out of petrol. So he circles around and goes back to the services, buys a petrol can, and then pulls up behind me. But he's about 2 car lengths behind me. And whilst I was sat in the car, my main concern was I only had 1 bar on my phone. I phoned my manager at the time and said, she lived actually quite close to where we were, and said, you might have to get me some petrol because I don't know what's gone on. I've broken down. And the lorries were coming past. I could feel them kind of shaking the mirror, but they weren't touching it. So we were off. I was off the road. So when I got out of the car, when I saw him pull up, I jumped out of the car to go to the petrol cap, because I think, right, we've got the petrol. Now I think back, right, I just bought the car. I probably didn't even know how to open the petrol cap. It's like a brand new car. There's probably some sort of trickery to open the petrol cap, because it's not easy anymore. And I look at him, and he's like 2 car lengths behind me. And I thought, God, I'm like, why are you parked so far away? And as I'm looking, a car just drove straight into the back of his car. Just came off the dual carriageway, bang, straight into the back of this BMW. And I was like, crikey, what happened there? But it appeared that the BMW just shunted forward, and no harm done, first of all. So I thought, okay, he looks okay. But then the car didn't stop. For somehow we learned afterwards that he'd managed to rip one of his wheels off when he'd hit the car, and then just carried on coming towards me. And I'm stood on the side of the road. On this side, I've got a dual carriageway. It's busy. It's a very, very fast dual carriageway, even at that time of night. And then this side, I've got the little bit of grass that is in between the junctions, like a triangle shape. So I actually thought, I'm going to die. I thought, I'm going to die, and this is going to hurt, because there was nowhere for me to go. I thought, this is going to hurt. And for what felt like minutes, but probably was split seconds, I guess, I just stood there and thought, here we go. And then something in my mind just went, no, I'm not going. I can't leave my boys. They're not ready for me to go. Like, my boys need me. Like, I had this whole conversation in my head of like, Jake thinks he's old enough. He's 19 at the time. He's not old enough, and this one's not old enough. And I was like, I can't go. And
life is flashing before you. Yeah. Do
you know the funny thing? Not my businesses, only my boys. That's the only thing that I cared about at the time. Which is a life lesson in itself, really, and not a flat stomach. So I was like, that's not important either now, which was my lifetime ambition. But I was like, I took 2 steps. I took 2 random steps, and then I stopped again, and then the car hit my car exactly where I was stood previously. Ooh. Exactly there. So had I not moved those 2 steps, I would have had a full-on car coming at me. It hit my car hard enough that it flicked it across, and it was face first into the central reservation. It literally flicked it across 2 lanes, and that's where I was stood. But I wasn't so aware of that at the time. I just saw, and the car had hit my leg, but I was still standing, but I felt like I was standing on ice. I felt like my leg wanted to slip away, and I was still stood. And then I can remember seeing the underside of the car, and as it kind of moved, it hit my shoulder. I couldn't describe it. It hit my shoulder and sent me spinning. And as I spun, it winded me, and I ended up on all fours on the floor. And then I looked up. I'm like, kind of like looked up like this and thought, bugger, I'm in the lane now. I'm now in the dual carriageway. I could feel all the stuff underneath my hands, and I thought, I'm going to have to get to the side of the road, or I am going to get run over. It's a busy road. I didn't know, luckily for me, and I was lucky all the way through this. It doesn't sound lucky, but I was lucky all the way through, that a van driver had seen what happened and had slowed down, and he actually stopped some of the traffic. And he even came to the hospital the next day and said, to see if I was okay. And he said, those 2 steps saved your life. Yeah, so I was just like, I wish I took his details, actually. If he's ever watching, please contact me. But those 2 steps, those 2 random steps saved my life. I would not be here. So I'm sat on the side of the road. As I'm crawling across the road, my husband's still locked in the car. All the central locking had come on. He gets out of the car and he's like screaming my name. Like, I'll never forget how he sounded. But of course, the car, remember I said you'd been flicked over. So he's running out into the road to go towards that car. He doesn't understand where I am. And so then I had to like try and call him and wave to him. And eventually, just for a split second, he was going to run across the 2 lanes. And again, we didn't know that somebody had stopped the traffic. So I kind of like waved and then we came to the side of the road. And I just knew I had no blood. I'd like broke a nail and I had a tiny little cut on my hand. Yeah, I know, proper first world problems, hey. Girls are going to know what that means. But I broke like the thumbnail and I just knew I couldn't stand up, but I wasn't really in any pain. So I just thought I was obviously bruised.
Yeah. Do you really feel the pain at the moment? I think it's just still in the moment. It's like
nothing really. It was just numb, and I just knew that I couldn't stand on it. I just had this thing in my head. I knew that I couldn't get up off the floor, so I got as close as I could. And then the funny thing is obviously there was so much traffic all backed up. And my manager, remember I said to you that she lived quite close. She was on the other side of the road, and she was looking without realising it was me and saying, if I've got to get a petrol, this is going to take me forever. I hope I don't get stuck in that traffic. And I was the person that was causing the traffic. So, that was kind of a funny thing, really. Yeah. So the ambulance comes, they take me to the hospital, and I get to the hospital and my children are all there, my husband's there. When you've got regrets, really. We had a lease car, so the police put me in the ambulance and they left my husband there for someone to come and pick up this car. Then they dropped him home, and then he got on a motorbike to go from here to the hospital, and I was just like, the shock that he was in to get on a motorbike and get on that same dual carriageway to come and see me is one of my biggest regrets. If any of the regrets I've got, that's the one that I didn't just go, screw the car, get in the ambulance with me. But by the time I got to the hospital and I was I don't know what they gave me, maybe gas and air or something. And I just remember being on this board and waking up, and my sons were there, all 3 of them. My husband was there and one of their friends. So I was like, what's he doing there? Strange. What I didn't know until 2 weeks ago is that when they took me off to take me to the room, is that they took my husband and my children into a room, and my husband broke down and kept saying, I've lost her, I lost your mum. So my sons didn't really know what was going on. In fact, no, before I got there, that was. So before they'd seen me, that's what had happened. He'd said, I've lost her. And my now 26, but then 13-year-old said, I thought you were dead. I thought, like, well, he's saying I've lost you.
Because he witnessed it. He probably witnessed everything, and it's sure.
So my story that I will tell is not his story. It's a very different. I felt like I was the luckiest person in the world. I told people I was the luckiest person in the world.
What does that moment look like for you? Because what you're saying is very interesting. I've had a lot of people. Let me say this again. The thing I find most interesting is that when you explain the incident, I've noted that about 2 to 3 times you've said you were very lucky. But I don't think that's the approach a lot of people have when they go through something like that, because always in our head is like, God, why did you let something like this happen to me? But for you, I find out that almost 2 to 3 times you're constantly saying, I was lucky. This should have been worse. I came out.
I was lucky. I should have died. That's the thing. Door A was you're going to die. Door B is okay. You're going to be alive, but you're going to have to take what you take. So I'm like, people said to me in the hospital, "Poor you," and I said, I should be in the morgue. I'm not in the morgue. I'm the luckiest person in the world. Let me be honest with you, Arrey. For 12 years, I beat myself up that I accepted it. And it took someone to talk to me and say, hey, you're allowed to be vulnerable. At that point in your life, you actually, you were vulnerable and you're hating yourself for that vulnerability. Because I thought, God, what if I'd fought earlier? What if I'd moved earlier? I could have been further away. Or that's, I suppose, was like, it wasn't a massive trauma. It was just in the back of my head to go, you should have tried harder. You should have tried harder and run quicker. You should have gone. got into that fight or flight mode quicker. But the reality is it was probably seconds and it felt like forever. But yeah, I mean, God, I'm the luckiest person in the world for the first year after the accident. I think my children wanted to euthanize me at one point. I was so annoying. I was literally like, it's Mother's Day, I shouldn't be here. Cry. It's Valentine's Day, I shouldn't be here. It's Tuesday, I shouldn't be here. It was a lot. I was on a lot of medication. I'm using that excuse. But yeah, I still do genuinely feel lucky.
I mean, I can generally relate to what you're saying, because this at some point I've had my mom sick, and I remember my brother calling me to tell me about it, and the way his voice was, I could feel it from his voice, like he was not very sure what was going to happen. So when I think about you and I think about your children being there, having to watch you go through that process, I can't imagine what it looks like. But what did that process most importantly teach you about life?
I was a workaholic. The only thing that I thought of, or the only thing that I cared of right at that time was, like I said, not a flat stomach, was not my businesses. It was just my people. You know, the people that are really important to me. I have 3 boys, my husband, my boys is like, my 4 boys were the most important thing. And that's ultimately the only thing that I couldn't leave. Nothing else mattered at that time. And that was a shock. You know, I've been in a very entrepreneurial family, you know, being taught how to answer the phone my camera has decided to move. Being told how to answer the phone at 4 o'clock, at 4 years old, coming home from school and our sofa was sold and someone sawing the leg off another sofa to fit it through the window because it don't fit through the door. You know, everything was for sale, selling my clothes. I went to Jamaica, come back with nothing because people wanted the clothes. So they sold. That was my life, you know. So everything was like business. It was a deal. There was stuff to be done. So it was a bit of a shock, really. At that time, I had 2 salons. I had one in David Lloyd and one in Next Generation. And, you know, I've relaunched. I've come away from a partnership. I'm the bad guy in the relationship of myself and my business partner splitting up. Everybody just thought I'd done something different, or the perception was that she was the good guy and I was the bad guy. And none of that mattered. None of it mattered at all. Literally, it did matter the next day in terms of like, how am I going to keep the business going and all those things. But in that very, very second, nothing else mattered. And so I'm the luckiest person in the world.
So you go to the hospital, the doctor walks in and he's trying to give you what I call it bad news and not so good news. When he says,
they think they position it as good news, really. Anything apart from dead is good news for them. So I remember being in this room and they cut all your clothes off. For a leg injury, they cut your clothes off and they elevate the leg. And I remember my children being stood at the bottom of the bed and I've got this sheet and I was like, guys, you need to move. Like, you know, I'm bare under this sheet and whatever you put on there, just take it. And I said to my son that, you know, it's just bruised. I'm absolutely fine. And he said he was doing sports science at college. And he's like, it very much isn't bruised, Mum. It's very, very broken. And I was like, no, it's fine. They did the x-ray, said, right, you know, it is broken. We can operate. Put me up on the ward. Give me a little bit of toast. Kneel by mouth for midnight. I wake up in the morning and it's too swollen for them to operate. So the surgeon comes around, or one of the surgeon's people comes around, not the main guy, comes in and he's like, good morning, and very chirpily says, right, we can operate on the leg, but you're not going to be able to use it. So I was like, what? I was like, what? And I said, what do you mean I won't be able to use it? He said, well, you won't be able to use it. It will be straight and you won't be able to stand on it and you won't be able to walk properly. And I was like, no, that can't happen. I have a hair salon in a gym, 3 children. I need to be able to use my leg. I'm a hairdresser. And he was like, oh, okay. And just went away. He was like, just walked away. And I was like, okay. And then he come back in the afternoon. I thought, here we go. He's going to try and sell me that same solution again. And he came over and said, right, okay, we've had another look at the x-rays. And the good news is that we think we can do something. And you won't have the straight leg. You will be able to bend the leg. But you're very unlikely to be able to stand on it. And I said,
you're not going to be able to use it you're going to be able to use it, but you won't have to bend it. Yeah.
So, you know, you'll have a slight bit of bend and I'm like, so I'll be able to do hairdressing? And he said, probably not. He said, you know, we can we can do something better for you, but you're still not going to be able to have full use of the leg. So I was like, okay, I'm a hairdresser in a gym. You're not understanding me. I'm a hairdresser in a gym. I need to be able to be a hairdresser. I need to, I cycle, I go to body pump. I also, have a salon. I have to pay wages. How am I going to do this? And again, he went away. And the third time he came back, I don't even remember what it was, but it couldn't have been a good solution because he went away again. And then literally 2 days later, he came back and he hopped up to the bed and was like, right, we've got it now. And I was like, okay, this best be good. And he's like, what we're going to do is we can do something. You're going to be able to bend the leg. We don't know how much you're going to be able to bend the leg. But you're going to be able to bend, you're going to be able to stand on it for small periods of time. We're going to take some bone out of your hip, and we're going to take the bone in your hip to rebuild the knee. He said there's like a little saucer that the bones all shattered, and we're going to make that into it and then put all the pieces back together. And then that's the solution that we're going to have. And then he started talking about digging deep to get to the right bone marrow. And I was like, I am not a hard-boiled egg. Do that. Don't talk to me anymore about it. So I thought, that's the best solution they can come up with. That's great. It wasn't until a couple of years ago that I thought, God, what if I'd taken that first one? Anyway, a couple of days later, they operated, and I woke up and I had 2 plates, 22 screws, 2 10-inch scars on my legs, a cage on my leg. And don't get me wrong, I had no knowledge of a broken leg, which was probably really good at that time. I thought you broke your leg, you got a cast on it for 6 weeks. Everyone wrote rude slogans, and then you went back to your life. You went back to your life after that. So that's what my knowledge of a broken leg was. So when I wake up and there's this cage on my leg and it's massively swollen and I'm hooked up to the morphine and stuff, and I'm like, wow, wasn't expecting that. But I still felt really I was still like, okay, this is great. We fixed this now. He's told me that I can bend my leg. He's told me that I can get my life back. So it's just a matter of how long it takes. I remember my manager coming in on day 1 and everyone was part-time. I was the only full-time person. It was a very small salon. And I said, can you just call my clients and tell them I won't be back for 3 weeks? And she was like, 3 weeks? I said, okay, maybe 5, but, tell them I'll be back. I was terrified. I thought I had such an ego at the time, which all business owners do, is that I was the only person who could stand behind that chair and that the business was going to collapse without me. The reality was that it didn't. Thank goodness. And I had some good friends.
Which I'd like to come back to, because I think there's a lot of lessons to learn from that.
Oh, huge. I mean, I had a good friend that just came into the hospital and she was like, Deb, how can I help you? I'll move my salon from my kitchen and go into yours. And I was like, not a chance. So you've got to move your salon into there and take over my salon, And then she came back 2 or 3 times. And in the end, I was like, clearly, I have no choice on this. I'm going to have to trust. And actually, she did good. She's good friends now. Thank you, Beth. But she moved her salon. She was waiting for hers to open. So she moved her home salon into mine and kind of mentored my apprentice and my part-timers and did her clients and just kind of helped make sure that it didn't all fall apart for X amount of weeks.
So when you are in that process, and I'm wondering, what's keeping you going?
I just thought I'd go and get better. I thought I'd have my old life back. I thought if I just do what I'm meant to do, then I have my old life back. I had no concept of the time that it was going to take. I still had this 6 weeks thing in my head. And the reality is, like, what choice do you have? What choice did I have? I had the choice to go, just lay down and go, that's it, I'm sick, or go, how do I work this out? When I was in the hospital, I was like so well looked after in the hospital because they gave a discount to health workers, the gym that I was in. So I had a lot of clients in the hospital. I had a lot of clients come up to the hospital. The nurses were really well looked after visiting time with all the stuff that they bought me. Someone paid for my TV. One of my clients actually came in. I was on a really small ward with 3 little old ladies, like the Golden Girls, and they kept putting me in the hospital nighties. So we're all sitting in these little cotton pink nighties, literally like the Golden Girls. And this guy came in, I'd cut his hair the week before in David Lloyd, and told me that he was my nurse for the day, and if I needed a bedpan, he was my man. And I was like, give me a walk-in frame. I'm out of the bed. That's not happening at all. And he's like, I'm going to take a picture and put it on the wall at David Lloyd's. And I was like, I don't know which is worse, the bedpan or the picture. But I suppose that what happened is the following week, my husband wasn't coping very well with it. I won't go into that because that is his story and he doesn't choose to tell it, but he wasn't coping. The children were home. I just felt like I wanted to get home. So I got the physios to discharge me. You have to prove that you can walk up the stairs. Come home, fell down the stairs, never ever walked up the stairs for 6 months. I went on my bum for the whole 6 months because I just didn't have that confidence. And
what's up, guys? If you're watching this, I just wanted to break here to give you some important news. So we have just launched the Smart Club, which is my private mentorship club for anyone who wants to learn a high income digital marketing skill. Whether you're building your personal brand, whether you want to become a freelancer, a service provider, or your goal is to learn the skill and get a high income digital marketing job, the Smart Club is the place for you. We have 12 plus digital marketing skills that we're going to teach you through live classes. So every week for the next couple of months, I'm literally going to mentor you personally and make sure that you reach your goal with your digital marketing skills. So down below, I just wanted to break and give you a very quick shout out. Down below, there's going to be a link. Make sure you check it and enroll before you keep watching the rest of the video. And I look forward to seeing you on your very first club session.
Mounting that courage until you could take a cyclist race. I think we'll circle back ahead to it. I wanted to talk about where you mentioned something. You said, as a business owner, sometimes we have a lot of ego in the way. When you are, you are in the hospital bed and then you're thinking of your businesses and how to get them moving forward. Talk to me about the part, what you meant by the ego in the way and how maybe the business lessons you learned from that point.
Oh, huge. So I was part of a salon networking marketing company, kind of watched all their stuff and done stuff. And everybody always tells you, you shouldn't be working in the business. You shouldn't be working on the tools behind the chair. You should be working on the business, right? I've got a tiny room. I've got 3 chairs, a barber's chair and 2 basins. We're talking very small because everything else that I needed was obviously in the health club. There was a bar, restaurant, toilet, changing room. So I didn't need a big amount of space. I've got this small, and it's like, well, how do you get a receptionist for that size of a salon? So what happened was obviously my friend came in and was looking after her stuff. And so in the beginning, I would just go into the salon to try and manage the salon. They'd wash my hair, put me in a taxi and send me home. They didn't know what to do with me. And then there were some days when there wasn't anyone there. So I would go in to get a taxi to the salon, on crutches, trying to carry a laptop. It was all a bit tricky, and wedge my leg up underneath the thing and answer the phone. And so what I discovered is that by me answering the phone, and if you think in a small, and it happens in a lot of small businesses, that I had, a 17-year-old apprentice answering my phone for me. I had a stylist or myself, that was probably in the middle of doing someone's hair, blood on the hair, and they'll pick up the phone and be like, yeah. Okay, great, lovely, see you then, bye, gone. Yeah. It's the fastest conversation in the world, just book them in and go. So when I was sat there, people would phone up and say, oh, can you fit me in this week? And I'd be like, yeah, I can fit you in this week, but aren't you due for your colour? You're well overdue. And they'd be like, I know, but you're never going to be able to fit that in for me. And I would look at the book and I would obviously fit them in. So what was a call that was maybe £40 was £120 booking, because I had the time to actually have a conversation with someone. I had the time to start sending out text reminders to people to say, hey, you're overdue for this. We've got a special offer on. Or to do a special offer. I had the time to literally work on the marketing of the business, because that's the only thing that I could do. I couldn't stand up. I tried to gown people up and stuff like that. So what happened from that is we used to probably take 75,000 a year, give or take, right? We're under the VAT threshold. I then kind of started looking for other things in the business we could do, teeth whitening, ended up with a spa makeover photo studio that we moved the business to, kept that one, opened another one as a franchise, outgrew that within about 6 months of being in it, and then moved to a 7,000 square foot spa. In the first 8 months of being in that spa, we had a photo studio, a jacuzzi, a mud resort, steam room, 10 treatment rooms, hair salon. We took 444,000 in 8 months. In beauty, that's a lot of money. A lot of money.
Yeah.
We worked with Groupon, we worked with Voucher, we worked with Living Social, but none of that would have happened if I'd have stayed behind the chair.
Yeah, true.
Like, it would have been impossible. So the lesson that, for everybody is that you're not the best person to do it, because guess what? We lost one client to that lady because he just liked her hairdressing better. He was a male client, £20 every 6 weeks. But other clients stayed with us. So we didn't lose any business. We did better. better without me standing there. Now, how's that ego? I wasn't a big ass soon, was I? They just happily went to the next person. And even when I went back in and I was hairdressing, most of them stayed with my manager and with the other stylists because they were happy. They liked the business. They didn't have to be me.
Yeah.
And a lot of it would be my friends who were on mates rates, and they would be like, take it easy, but still do my hair. And I would come home. We closed at 3:00 on a Saturday. And I can remember coming home, and by this time I had a metal brace on my leg that I had to wear all the time. And my leg would swell so much that the swelling would come over the straps. And it would be so painful, the knee would lock up, that I would crawl up the stairs and go and sit in bed at 3:30 just to elevate the leg and to try and reverse what I'd done by standing up in the day and making hardly any money, really, is such. So, it wasn't the ego of thinking I was the only person. The best thing I ever did was get on the marketing and the customer services side of my business, because that's what I'm really good at. Yeah.
I think that's really, really important that you talk about that, because I run a marketing agency. So sometimes, and I know that for myself, a lot of times I'm like, I'm the best person to write the copy. I have to write the copy.
That's the ego.
And it's so difficult for me to step away. And then on the flip side, it is worse if somebody writes the copy and doesn't do it as good as I will. I'm like, you see, this is why I shouldn't trust people. This is why I shouldn't let them do stuff.
You know what, though? I believe in imperfect action. It's a big saying of mine. Imperfect action. Does it need to be you being perfect doing it? Because the other person's might not be imperfect. It might just not be your style. If it converts, then that's the game, isn't it? Really, it isn't about being the best copywriter. It's about the person who gets the best results. So if that copy gets the results, then realistically, what you're doing. And I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs over the years, like in the last 13 years, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs, and that get into that 6-figure. So there's a process, a lifestyle in a business, where in the beginning you have to do everything, because you can't afford to pay anybody else, right? So you have to do everything, and so then you're doing everything. But there's a bit when you get near the 6 figures where you run out of you. If you're still doing everything, you cannot grow anymore. So you get to a bottleneck in the business where you go, I need to start doing some £10 tasks. I need to stop doing what I could pay someone £10, £11 an hour for. Get a VA, go and get somebody overseas who's even cheaper if you're, if you can work that way, or get somebody here. There's a process where you have to do that. And actually, it's really hard to see. I should have paid £10 an hour to a receptionist on the busy days, maybe, not on the days where we were quiet and it was fine. But on the busy days, if I'd have done that, how much more money would we have brought in? Because that one phone call, £40 to 120, so there's an extra £80 in the pot. At that time, that was a day's wages for somebody. So, that was one phone call. If they took 10 calls and maybe an extra £800, I had some high ticket items. I pioneered a Brazilian blow dry in this area with a product that nobody else had. Everyone's got it now because my staff all took it to other salons. But I was the only person who had this. And because I was in a gym, it was very suitable for people in a gym, no downtime. And we could do, it was a treatment that was at the time was like £150, and my apprentice could do it. But it didn't need to be me. It didn't need to be me. But then one time, no one could do it. I had a lady flying out to India needed to do, someone coming from Oxford. And I did 5 or 6 of those in the week. And it's quite a long process. And it put me in bed and broke my back. Like, I never had a bad back in my life, but that did because of the other injuries. And it ruined me, all for the sake of not paying somebody to do it. And I see it time after time after time, to be honest. And it's having, that's a process that, in my coaching business, when I was purely coaching, that process I would manage with people to say, look, let's do this step by step. Let's start with a £10 task. What can you outsource? I had a client last year who's got a food business doing really, really well, really, really in demand. And yet I was trying to get him to build a team because there's so many bookings coming in. He was at that stage where he was a one-man band. And I was like, you need to get someone else to maybe clear up after an event. And he called me one day and said, oh, Deb, I just spent 4 hours washing up. And I was like, was that the best use of your time, to spend 4 hours washing up? It might have been therapeutic, but I was like, the least you could have done is put your phone on the window ledge and we could have had a session. So doubled up. But, that's where that ego comes in, that you're the only person who can do it, is a control thing, because it has been only you. So, up to a point, I get it. And I wouldn't advocate anyone go and jump in front of a car or break their leg to learn that lesson. But it's so important, because if you want to scale to 7, 8 figures, you can't do that on your own. Not one person.
Would you advise someone getting somebody else to do something if all you do at that point is break even? Do you think that's a wise decision to make?
Yeah, because there's stuff that you're rubbish at. So there's stuff that you're absolutely rubbish at, and there's stuff that you're brilliant at. And your brilliance is what's got the business to here, right? The stuff that you're not good at is what's holding you back, because it will take you forever to do. So say, for example, you're a big picture person, like you like to maybe set up the marketing strategies in your marketing business, but do you want to be the person who schedules the ads? Do you want to be the person who goes and finds the images and stuff like that? Because you could pay someone to go and sit and schedule ads and load them up, or you could pay someone to interact for somebody who doesn't want to do their social media themselves. So you pay someone to interact and speak and stuff like that, and get much better results, much better engagement, trick the algorithms, and they'd be paid £10-11 an hour, which you're going to charge your client anyway. And then your results are tenfold. But until you've had time to sit back and go, hey, that's worked for that person, or that's worked for that person, you're so far in it. You're literally so far in it, you can't see what else is there. And that's what happens to a lot of businesses. They run out of time, literally themselves. And you've got a family, you've got a girlfriend, you've got a mum and dad, you could have a social life, you might try and go to the gym, and you're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning with all of those things whizzing through your head going, I know that I need to do something different, just don't know how. And, my mum's sick and I don't find the time to do it. That guilt. My kids, I don't ever see my kids. I'm on my phone all the time. And it's, that 3 a.m. scaries. Every entrepreneur has it. Wakes up and goes, don't even talk to me about going to the gym or going here or going on holiday and not being able to turn your phone off. First time I got a team, and I was like, I used to put my phone in a drawer. I'd go on holiday, put my phone in a drawer, say to my staff, if there's a problem, phone my husband. Because I was like, they'll only phone him if it's a real problem, right? And I could disconnect myself. But in my head, I was like, they can't bankrupt me in a week. Whatever problems they cause me, I will fix when I get back, right? Terrible.
It's a level of level-headedness to do that, I would say.
It does. But I got to sort of burnt myself out. But I was like, and every time I went back, there was a problem to resolve. I had a receptionist who decided that she didn't like people anymore. So she was really rude to somebody, and I had to go back and fix it. It's stuff like that. So the letting go of control is hard, because those things are there, but at the same time, you will be stuck in your business. You just can't scale. And I've worked with some really big coaches in the UK. I've trained at their events. I've trained with them, and I've seen the difference between like the 6-figure and the 7-figure people. And one is about growth, and one is about scale. And scale you can't do on your own, or you can do it on your own, but it'll take you longer. I'll give you a really good example. I'm a speaker, so ask me to speak, put me on stage, I'm fine. Ask me to write the speech, oh my goodness, I will procrastinate my hours away, because I'm too fast. I can't write as fast as I think. So, for example, I'm an NLP master. When I had to do my essay, I had a 3-month extension, and I was going to ask for another 3-month extension because I couldn't write the essay. And I phoned at the tutor, and he said, you're not getting another one. You're not having another one. This is your deadline. And he said, all you need to do, he said, I know that you know it. You know that you know it, but you need to demonstrate it. So I sit down, and then 2 seconds later, I kid you not, I'm hoovering the salad drawer in the fridge. Like I'm hoovering up the bits of onion, because that was more important than starting this stupid essay, right? That's the level of procrastination I put myself through, of going, I know it's more important if I do this. I got the dice in there. Yeah. So what I did in the end was, everybody was out on a Saturday, and I thought, right, I've got this. Came downstairs, flicked the Zoom on, recorded myself. I spoke all of the essay. Answered all of the questions, sent it to Rev, got it transcribed into a Word document, gave it to my team leader and said, get rid of all the bits that I don't like. Could have done Grammarly, but I got him to do it. And then I crafted that into the essay. I sent it to my NLP trainer, and the feedback was A, you've passed, and B was, that's a very you essay. And it was because I spoke it. So I had to, so I'm very much a person who doesn't believe in the word no, it just means find another way. So for me, that was find another way. And I've since then, that was a couple of years ago, since then I've used that to write my chapters in my book, to write my speech for the TEDx, and pretty much anything that I have to write is done verbally, first of all, because I just can't do it the other way.
Now I'm curious what your process for TEDx looked like when you were preparing for the stage. Number one, are you nervous? But most importantly, what was the process? What does that process look like? You preparing to get on stage? So
preparing for the TEDx. Yeah. So 2 years ago, so I worked with some big coaches in the UK, right? Came away from them a couple of years ago, wanted to be my own identity, not be part of the team, not go, okay, you're part of this person's team, right? Not for any reasons apart from I was ready to maybe have my own community, but stand in my own skin and work out who I was, because I was a hairdresser and I was really happy. And then I couldn't be a hairdresser anymore. And so then I was like, what do? I end up coaching, digital marketing, etc., etc. But mimicking, I always like really mimicking other people. I see somebody else that's doing, and I find this all the time, find someone else that's doing really well, mimic their style, think that you're going to get what they get. Reality is you're here, they're way over there, and they're always going to be way over there. So you've got to be chasing forever. So I came away from it and decided to go, okay, what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? And in that process was like, I'm going to get myself a TED talk. And everybody was like, yeah, you're going to get a TED talk, that kind of, let's humor her smile. So that was, and I'm going to be a speaker. And I remember one of my friends when we were on tour saying to me, well, what are you going to speak about? I said, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to speak about, but I know I'm going to be on that stage and I'm going to be a speaker. So it's the beginning of last year, I'd started in the process of this who am I type thing, started a podcast, started doing some stuff on my local radio station. I realized I really loved the podcast. I really loved the speaking side and getting people's stories and stuff like that. So accidentally became very, very much more visible. And in the pursuit of this TED talk was like, how do I become a speaker? What do I do? So I met a TEDx speaker last year who has a different company. He's 4 times. He became my mentor. And so I flew to New York to get a show reel. To be a speaker, you need to have a show reel. So he had an event in New York at Columbia University. So I was like, okay, we'll come to New York. He was in the UK later in the year, but I'm so impatient. It had to be then. And New York was the next one. And why not? Go to New York. So I went to Columbia University, talked a little bit about this story first time, and they recorded it. So then I had a show reel to clip up and put onto YouTube and put into reels, etc. I had that. Then they came and did Oxford and Cambridge, and I spoke at both of those. I've got 3 lots of recordings. What I realized is I actually became very visible over the last year. So I was on 50 podcasts last year, some of them mine, some other people's. I had a 4-page spread in a magazine. I was nominated for 4 awards and I won the awards. And every time I made a big fuss about it, every single time. So then when I found out, and the TED is a funny story actually, because Corey Poirier is my mentor. So he said, right, these are the TEDs that are taking applications. And it was like, I'm not a stranger to travel. Okay. So Montana, Arizona, Australia, and somewhere else. And I'm like, okay, let's have a look. But they were, the timescales just didn't fit. It was like they were November or something ridiculous. Yeah. And I still had this, going to be a TED talk. This guy's had 4. I want 1. And so then the next one that came through was Western New London. And I was like, I'm probably not going to get a TED talk. But I thought, if you don't fill in the damn form, it's a definite no, right? So just fill in the damn form, and it's London. So I fill that in, send it off, think, oh, well, what's happening? My mum was ill. She was in hospital, had the worst day of my life, where she had a condition that actually gave her delirium. And so it was horrendous. And been in hospital caring for her that day, came home and checked my emails and I had an interview for Western New London. But it turned out to be Western New London, Canada. Ontario, and not our London. And I was like, oh, okay. But I've got an interview. Yeah, so I scheduled the interview. That was the Monday, scheduled the interview for the Friday with the thing of like, let's just see how far this goes. Because it can't be that easy that I put the right stuff in. The theme was Rising Phoenix, which I didn't know at the time. And then I was interviewed by these two students on the Friday. I put my A game on for these two 20-year-olds, like, hello, literally impressed the life out of them. And then they offered me a place, sign the contract, and you're here. And it was like, okay, so we're going to Canada. You know, because I had a yes. I'm not waiting around for another yes that's a little bit more convenient for me. I'm going for the yes. In my head, I'm like, yeah, it's winter, Toronto, low season, flight's not going to be that expensive. My travel background kicked in. But that's the reality, is that I had an opportunity and I took the opportunity. Yes, I had to travel. Yes, it cost me some money, some investment. Yes, it was the best 15 minutes of my life. Don't tell my husband that. But it was amazing. They coach you through the process. So from that interview, they then coach you through the process. And even though I told them my story, they wanted me to write it down, which again, I was like, really, guys? I've just told you what I'm going to talk about. You don't need any more. And they were like, we do. We need it written down. We need you to write the speech. I was like, don't do this. What happened is that at the same time as that, I was offered a chapter in a collaborative book. And that was on resilience and Don't Break Me. So I combined the two. I spoke it. One went to be the chapter, and one became a shorter version. And so then you meet with them, and they keep going. So what is it? Let's make sure that this is right. Let's make sure you're not being political. So I have very much at the beginning of mine, and it's my mantra that no doesn't mean no. It just means find another person or find another way. Right? And they were so concerned about that. They were so concerned. There was so many conversations like, I'm not sure you can keep that in. And I'm like, if you listen to it properly, I'm not saying that I'm not saying, so they were very much, like, is this a bit of a date rape type thing? And I was like, if you listen, I'm saying no doesn't mean no. It means you're not the right person. So your no's fine, but they were just like, oh, we're not sure. TED will let that through. There's a lot of rules with the TED, a lot. So in the end, that did stay in, and I changed it to find another way. So it took the person out of it. And then I'd put in there and find a full-bodied yes, which I'd stolen from a friend. She uses that all the time. And I thought, that's really powerful in the heading. And they made me take that out because they said there might not be full-bodied people in the audience. So that was removed. So I was like, I'm literally talking about disability here. And yet, but it didn't matter, because I do know people that have been disqualified from TED. So they've done their TED and they were disqualified. So I was very much like, I'm not being disqualified. Whatever you need me to take out, I will make my story around whatever you need to take me out, because I've invested my time, I've invested my money, and I've told the world that I'm going. Really embarrassing if at this stage I go, they kicked me off the stage type thing. So then the process is that you have these meetings every couple of weeks, and then we flew to Toronto early, so we had one on their timescale. At Niagara was a read through, and they got me to read it from the paperwork, and it was horrendous. Actually horrendous. It's like I was reading somebody else's book. And so I was like I sent my husband out of the room, even though he's going to be on the stage and I'm going to be on the stage. I was like, you can't watch this. And so I said, look, guys, just as long as I know what to stick to. And here's the secret, right, to the confidence on the stage, is that it's my story, right? If I get it wrong, who knows? Only me.
Right.
No one else knows what bit I get wrong, what I missed out, because they haven't been there. They're an audience not of my peers. They're an audience of strangers. So that kind of was one of the things that gave me the confidence to go, okay, if I mess this up, I can land on my feet. No one's going to know. So then they had a dress rehearsal the day before. Well, not dress rehearsal. So we go to the university and do the rehearsal. And I was first. I was first for rehearsal, first to go on the Friday. I knew I was going on first. And that's fine, because I am a cherry picker. So I'm hear people speak and I'm like, I love that. Like the full-bodied yes, right? I'll include that in. I'll include it. And it's a bit like the most beautiful recipe you've got, and you get it perfect, and then you start going in the cupboard and adding things. It's a mess by the end of it. So me speaking first actually helped me a lot. But on that day, so when we went, you have 15 minutes for TED, like just 15 minutes. And I did my speech, came onto the stage. And the first bit is a little bit interactive, put your hands up. And then there's some jokes in there, and I've had to translate some of it to Canadian, like old banger for us is a lemon for them. Dual carriageway, they don't understand. So some and nobody laughed at the jokes. Nobody interacted. There was some guys sat in the audience, and halfway through I lost it. I was like, why are they not reacting? What's going on? Why?
Yeah.
Well, I could feel myself going, it's all gone wrong here, and doing a bit again. So I was 18 minutes 43. And they were like, it's great, but you need to cut that down by tomorrow morning. And then I went back to the hotel and read it and thought, I've forgotten loads of what I was meant to say. I'd already cut loads. So I was like, okay, less detail. Less detail was the key to it. So by the time it came to the day, I was fine.
What's up, guys? If you're watching this, I just wanted to break here to give you some important news. So we have just launched the Smart Club, which is my private mentorship club for anyone who wants to learn a high-income digital marketing skill. Whether you're building your personal brand, whether you want to become a freelancer, a service provider, or your goal is to learn the skill and get a high-income digital marketing job, the Smart Club is the place for you. We have 12 plus digital marketing skills that we're going to teach you through live classes. So every week for the next couple of months, I'm literally going to mentor you personally and make sure that you reach your goal with your digital marketing skills. So down below, I just wanted to break and give you a very quick shout out. Down below, there's going to be a link. Make sure you check it and enroll before you keep watching the rest of the video. And I look forward to seeing you on your very first club session.
They were still miking me up because I was first. They were miking me up and they'd announced me on the stage. So when I went out, there's nobody on the stage, and they don't indicate to say, okay, we're recording. You just walk out and it's like, is it?
Yeah.
And then halfway through, someone turned the lights on. Like all the lights of the auditorium come on. And I was like, does this mean get your coat? Go home? I don't know. So like, I was like, is this meant to happen? I thought, you know what, just carry on. Lights went off. Somebody opened a door, blasted music. I thought, this is not right. But people laughed where they were meant to laugh. People gasped where they were meant to gasp. And then what we haven't talked about, actually, we probably run out of time, is that I did all the recovery. So what I did was 2 years ago, I cycled around India. So the end of it is that I cycled 370 kilometers around India on a bicycle, not an electric one, just a normal one. Madness. Yeah. And what happened is after my recovery, where I thought, if I do what I need to do, I'll get back to where I was. The surgeon said to me, great, you're doing great. And I said to him, we're not finished yet. And they said, we are. This is as far as you go. And I come home and cried. And then I went to see some other surgeons who looked at my long-term diagnosis, and they said, you'll be in a wheelchair at 55. And I thought, no, I'm going to have to fight with you guys as well, because that's not going to happen either. So the end of my TED is that the year I cycled India was the year I was 55. So that was the year that I decided that I should have had my wheelchair.
At 55, aren't you scared to go cycling?
Yeah, terrified. Like really terrified. I was like, I'm going to ruin myself. I'm going to come home in a wheelchair. I trained, because I was so scared, I did train. And I'd met a boxer who said, somebody asked about hill runs, how she motivated to get, she started later in life. And she said, nothing motivates me, but I do know that if I don't train, when I get in the ring, I'm going to get punched. I'm going to lose. I'm going to be embarrassed, and it's going to be my fault.
Yeah.
So I changed my life in the summer, didn't go to festivals, didn't go to parties, got up at 5 o'clock on a Sunday morning and cycled and pedaled, and got from being able to cycle maybe 6 or 7 miles okay to being able to cycle 50 miles. And along the way, so I'd made a lot of mistakes, such as wearing underwear instead of cycling shorts. So I didn't know there's two things. So I did hundreds of miles in some shorts that were fairly see-through, and actually until this week did not know how see-through, because obviously I've never seen behind me, but they were my friend has said to me they're quite see-through, and it turns out the padding covers quite a lot, but it doesn't cover your bum cheeks, and it doesn't cover like the line. So I only just found that out 2 days ago, and I was like, oh my god. People were like, when we went past the supermarket, people were beeping their horn. I thought it was support. It's really, they could see the tattoo on my bum. So all of those things are in the TED. And the first day when nobody laughed, that's what threw me. The second day people did laugh. And then at the end when I said, okay, so that's the year that I should have been in the wheelchair, I obviously got a standing ovation at that. So I was very happy. I'd got to the stage where I could cycle 50 miles, 45 miles, 50 miles, never cycled 5 days in a row, and didn't know that it was a 5-day thing when I signed up for it. We were away for 10 days. So 10 days. I know I need to start reading the details, don't I? 10 days, 370 kilometers, 37K a day. So it's like 25 miles. I thought, well, that's all right. I can do that. Pay my deposit. Tell my husband I'm going to India. He's like, who with? I said, well, not you, obviously, from that response. So I said, I'm going to cycle around India. And he was like, crazy. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. And then I got sent all the pack and the itinerary, and it turned out we cycled for 5 days. So the first day was 74k, the second day was 100k. We cycled to the Ranthambore Tiger place, so on and so on. And yeah, it was such fun, and it was so interesting and stuff like that. But I trained on a mountain bike, so I had a good chance. But yeah, sometimes it was just crazy.
For example, I wanted to ask you, as a leadership expert, you've had to, you've spoken to a lot of leaders, a lot of entrepreneurs. What do you think is a good approach to becoming a better leader?
A good approach to become a better leader is learning how to speak, how to understand the learning style of your team, and really, really understand it. I do. I have my own personality styles, little thing like it's based on a pack of cards. And so often I see people, like as an entrepreneur, what normally happens is an entrepreneur will say, work 20 hours a day. And when we achieve what we achieve, I'll chuck a load of money at you. Right. Which is great if you're motivated by money. But to be honest, the generations that are coming into the industries now, they're not motivated by money. They're motivated by a thank you. They're motivated by time off. They're motivated by being respected and quality. So chucking a load of money at them is not going to work. And so you end up in a thing of saying that person's rubbish. They're not rubbish. You've just not given them what they need. So what they need to have and what they value. So you've not looked at that. If you can understand your team and put them into the right roles that are suitable for them. So for example, for me, if you gave me a very meticulous role, I had to do tiny details and a lot of writing, I'm going to be really, really bad. Not because I don't know how to do it, it's because that's not natural for me. So if you give me that, I'm going to let you down. Realistically, I'm never going to do it to the standard because I'll be so uncomfortable with what I'm doing. It'll take me longer. I'll hate it. You're not going to get the best of me. And all too often I see leaders going, be like me and you'll get what I get. And it's not how it works. You've got somebody who's very detail orientated, and you might think, oh, they're boring. They want facts. So they might need facts, figures, percentages, proof. They need all those details to make a decision. If they don't have all those details to make a decision, don't make a decision. Right? And so if you don't understand that about your person and you don't give that, and I know this from experience because I had a person in my team 25 years ago who I very probably bullied inadvertently because I didn't understand how they understood things. I don't know if we've got time for me to explain that properly.
Yeah. And would you say that a way to understand how they understand things is probably by sometimes analyzing when you give them a task, how they excel in the task, watching them? What do you say? Yeah,
I mean, it's just like the reason I've got one that's got 4 personality types, right, as opposed to every other profile there is out there, which are entirely valid, but so boring for me because I can't read 32 pages of feedback about myself and still be alive at the end of it. So I have, just 4. Diamond, they're your VIP person, they're the excitable person, they're the person who wants the glory, the luxury, the adventures. Okay, really, really great at motivating people, really easily bored. If they're not occupied and they're bored, they're disruptive to your business. The other one is the spade. Spade is very, very driven, value winning more so than they value people. They're usually a big entrepreneur, go hard or go home. They'll do so much more to win. Don't really care about people. Okay. You have the club, which is a meticulous guy who's just been talking about, absolutely hates to be wrong, wants to be seen as the expert. The reason they can't make a decision is they don't have the proof in their pocket to be able to make that decision, so they won't, because they can't be wrong. And then you have the heart-centered person who wants everybody to do well, cares more about relationships than they do about winning. Okay. If you recognize who that is in your industry, and you're smiling, so I think you're finding people. Okay. Once you understand that, and I do talk about that, I go to YouTube, it's on that. Once you understand that, you can understand where to put your person, how to motivate them, what they need. This is so good. They go and take it into your relationship. Go and take it to your mother-in-law who you squabble with. Go and take it to your teenager who's banging their door saying, you don't understand me. Reality is you don't, because you're not understanding their language. So if you understand the language if you understand what motivates your team and give them what they need individually, right? Hybrid or not hybrid, then they're going to be so loyal. They're going to love you because they'll be. So I'll give you a really easy example. As we go to Spain, we was going to move to Spain. We've got tiny bit of Spanish, right? When it comes to the bill, in tourist places, people are like rude to waiters sometimes. So we go, la cuenta, por favor. And the waiters get really excited. That's why they say, oh, Espanol, right? That's all we know. We don't know anymore. But they're so excited that you bothered to speak in their language.
Yeah.
So do that to your team and watch your team excel. Do that to your kids. Do that to your wife, your partner, your girlfriend. Understand what they need and give it to them.
All right.
Because they don't need what you need. And that's the biggest mistake the leaders make. They don't need what you need.
Right. I'm going to ask you, what is a good metric to measure success? For example, so I have a digital marketing mentorship club, and one of the things I say to those at the mentorship club is progress, not perfection. Because a lot of times we're looking for a really big goal, we're looking for a really big win for us to think that we have achieved success. But whereas success could be just, okay, today I got up at 5 a.m. and I make that my routine so that I have a bit more time to do other things maybe before I could liaise back with my team. And what would you think, or what would you say for you in your personal, in your journey, is a good metric to measure success, and how anyone watching this could apply that to their lives?
I think it's very much about the outcome. So there's two ways. I would say, what outcome is it that you want to achieve? So say, for example, you want to get to 6 figures. You want to get 6 figures in a year. So what I would do is go, okay, well, what does that look like per month, per week, per day?
Yeah.
And break that down into per day, and then just go, okay, so I need to earn 500 quid a day to get my target, 2,500 a week, 10 grand a year thing, 120 over the year, right? So we reverse engineer it. So we go, okay, a really easy way to do this, to manage it, is how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. We all want to eat the elephant in one bite. We know what we're like. We're crazy. But one bite at a time. So if I know that Monday morning, I've got to get up and I need to make 500 quid that day, right? I then need to work out, okay, what does it take for me to make 500 quid? What product am I selling? If I'm selling one product that is 500, say, for example, how many people do I need to contact and then have conversations with for that to become a sale? If you average a 1 in 3 conversion on a sale, which is, I'm not sure if that's still current actually, but that's old school. So I need to speak to 3 people. 2 are going to say no, 1's going to say yes. What do I need to do to speak to those 3 people? Where do I need to go? What do I need to do? If I get that on that day, then I'm on track. I just got to get up and do the same thing next day. If I'm ahead, great. There's got to be bad weeks, so just keep going ahead. So that's a good way to achieve success without being so stressful. But also going, is this manageable? Does it work in my business? If I'm consistent, none of us are consistent. If I consistently achieve that 500, that 10 grand a month, and it's just 500 quid a day, which is not the biggest thing. It's not thousands a month, thousands
it makes
per
a lot
day.
of sense when you compare.
Yeah. And the other thing is to live in the moment and reward yourself. Give yourself a pat on the back. Go, right, great. I haven't made $1 million. I'm achieving something. I had a friend that made like 30,000 in a year and then set herself a goal of 80,000 per month for the following year. So it gets to the end of January. It's really demotivated, strangely enough. And the goal was to buy a house. So I was like, okay, so what's the real goal here? The real goal is that you want to live independently. You don't want to be living at home anymore. So surely achieving that goal is worthwhile. How you do it is a different issue. You can change the rules, No's at me, no, find another way. So we go, you didn't make that 80 grand in January, but have you made enough to be able to go and rent a house or, be mortgageable or whatever? And it's finding ways to that route. The other thing that I would always do, and this comes from having a premises, having to fill columns and fill salary and pay wages, is the first thing that you do in the morning is your money-making activity, whatever that looks like. First, right? Most people, that's last on the list, and that's the one that gets moved over to tomorrow's list and tomorrow's list, right? And then you wonder why you've got no money at the end of the month. The first thing you do is the most uncomfortable thing, is your money-making activity. You look in your diary and go, I don't have anybody to talk to sell to, so what do I need to do? How am I going to do that? Whether it's chasing a debt, whether it's chasing an invoice, whether it's getting a refund back, money-making activity, your first focus is money, because we're all great at what we do, yeah? We're all great at doing what we do, so we don't need to think about that because we're doing what we do. You're a great copywriter, great marketing business, but how do you achieve that £500 a day goal? Or, you know, if you want to do £1 million a day, I can't remember what the figures are, but, you know, £1 million a year, you break that down. You know, how many thousands do you need to bring in? And then it's just a case of, how do I do it? And once you know how to do it one day, can you knock McDonald's that the next day, set it up, do the same thing, different venue, do the same thing, McDonald's, I call it McDonald's. But it's basically taking a replica of that model and put that anywhere. You can open a McDonald's anywhere in the world and it works because the concept works. So find your McDonald's way, set your target, set your goal, be damn consistent. I don't advocate getting up and going to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning because that doesn't make you any money. But if that gets you into the right motivational head to then say, okay, this is what I've planned, right? Then that's fine. It's different for everyone. Everything's different for everyone. Some people need to have that. I need to get up and come to my desk. I wander anywhere away from my desk first thing in the morning. I'm struggling to pull it back together. So if I have a sick mum, so if I have to take her out to do something, that day's pretty much dead. My motivation is gone. That's just for me. That's the way I work. And I burn out by like 7 o'clock in the evening. I'm not a type. I used to be able to work till 10 o'clock. Now I can't. I'm too old. But I actually set myself, this is nothing. I set myself an alarm on my phone to finish work at 5 o'clock. Because when I was training, if I finished at 7 o'clock when I was training, and this is a Tony Robbins thing, to be honest, but he was like, if you've got a goal, there'd be 3 things that you're doing that are taking you away from that goal. So all the goodwill, all the good intentions in the world, if you've got 3 things that are taking you away. So for example, I would work until 7 o'clock. I have an office in the garden. I'm still working here. There's no one around because my children are grown up now. Sometimes I'd work in the kitchen at the breakfast bar, and then I'd shut my laptop and then I'd move over to the cook and cook the dinner. There's no gap in between, right? So that's 7. And then sometimes I would watch somebody's webinar for moral support for having the numbers. And I realized that doing that didn't allow me time to train for the bike ride. So that very day, I set an alarm for 5 o'clock, no work, do something different instead, Monday to Friday. And it worked. I would do something different. It was astonishing, to be honest, to finish at 5 o'clock. Wow. You get an evening. It's madness. I was like, what do people do with all this time? And sometimes I would go to a spin class and sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes I'd just do stuff around the house that meant my weekend was free for me to go and do a 6-hour bike ride, or do you know what I mean? For me to be able to go and do what I needed to do. And people were so impressed by that 5 o'clock alarm. It's ridiculous. It's like it was the best thing I'd ever done in my life. But I tell you how focused it makes you when someone phones up in the day and just wants to have a little chit chat because they're having a bad moment, and you know what you've got to get done by 5 o'clock. You're like, you listen for 10 minutes and you're like, okay, sorry, I've got to go. And you go. So you actually, there's a lot of time wasting that goes on when you work for yourself.
All right. Debbie, I'm going to ask you, I think this is the last question so that I don't chop too much of time, but on your journey for someone who's watching this right now, and I'm trying that we leave them with a lot of good words and also an action plan. Let's say I'm watching this and I'm on my journey to fixing myself. What do you think is one of the most important components for me to begin with?
Now you're bringing the tough questions in now. To fixing, so this is about you personally, more about your mindset, okay? Yeah. Is understand your values. Understand your values and put some boundaries around those values. So for me, not working in the evening, not working at weekends, that's my values. So when someone asks me to do that, I did it for you today, obviously. But for somebody, when they're asking me that, I'm like, why? Why would I do that? What's the benefit to me? And also is understand that the people around you, what value they're giving to you. What we do is, I'm an overgiver, and I have in my life, and I'm like, you're going to laugh at this one. Okay, so this comes from 50 Cent, and I saw a TikTok because I'm a big TikTok fan. I know you've got to listen to the guy, but this is so profound. I was just telling somebody in the car yesterday that if one thing you do when you're fixing yourself is do this, right, is in your life there are withdrawers and depositors. So people who in your life that deposit, give you something, okay, keep. People who only withdraw from you, what he said is, if you found a cash machine and you got free money, you'd keep going back until that cash machine was empty or the bank found a way to shut it down. So the withdrawers in your life, go. Right? Keep the people who deposit in you. That's what will fix you. And honestly, anybody who's watching this, just go to the top 10 people that you've spoken to this week and work out who the withdrawers, because unfortunately, we have more withdrawers than we do depositors. So go work with the depositors. The withdrawers, cut them off. Literally cut them off before they suck the life out of you. And you'll find that your mindset changes. You start working with good people. You start being around good people who've only got your best intentions, that actually... You don't need to fix yourself because you were okay in the first place. The other people wanted what you want. They wanted to climb over you to get what you had.
True. Totally agree, Debbie. And I want to thank you for as well for a really good... our last question. We always ask every guest this question on the podcast. When all is said and done, how do you want to be remembered as Debbie?
How do I want to be remembered? Fun, interesting, great to be around. That's it.
Sweet.
No big legacy. A glass of wine, a little bit of fun, some good company, good food, good people. If I'm remembered for that, then that's great.
Right. Thank you, Debbie. I do appreciate the energy you brought to this. I was wondering if we were going to be able to touch everything that I wrote down, but it just happened that in the course of the conversation, for example, I wrote down a question about the 5 personality types that I was going to ask you.
Okay.
In the conversation, you just
I'll put it in anyway.
Yeah. I was like, are you looking at my question?
No. You obviously just did some research on me and heard what I talked about. But like the personality thing is cool. If nobody takes anything from this, take the 50 Cent thing. Honestly, it's a game changer. Game changer. Money making activity, number one. Break it down into achievable, targeted days and achieve them, smash them. Then go to the gym. Go and sit in a coffee shop. Once you've achieved it, just go. Congratulate yourself and get rid of the leeches.
Right. Very important. Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate you for your energy and I appreciate you for sharing selflessly. I think that my audience is going to love this. It's really been knowledge-filled.
Well, I'm so excited to be invited on. So thank you so much. I'm sorry about the wobbly camera. What's going on with my tripod? But hey, we worked our way through it.
If you just enjoyed this episode, the chances are that you're going to love and enjoy other amazing episodes that we've recorded. So don't forget to check them out somewhere around this video. And please don't forget to tick our 3 boxes. Number 1, make sure to hit the subscribe button because the more we grow, the bigger guests we can approach and the more value we can bring to you here on the podcast. Number 2, if you enjoyed any part of this episode, what I want you to do is simply take that link and share with a friend and simply say, hey, there's something very important between 10 to 12 minutes that I'd love you to watch. And number 3, make sure to check the description down below for helpful resources. You're going to find the link to join the Smart Club, which is my private mentorship club for friends who want to learn a digital marketing skill. Whether your goal is to become a freelancer, if you're building your brand, or if you want to get a job in digital marketing. Also, you're going to find the link to join our 21,000 Smart Friends on emails so that you can get an email from me once every week. Plus, if you want to connect with a guest on this episode, the link is going to be below. So before you leave, please make sure you tick these 3 boxes. Like I always say, my friends, cheers to many more years of shamelessly living and crazily excelling in passion and purpose. And I'll speak to you in the next episode.